If you're a beginner to an intermediate guitar player and you're looking for ways to clean up your guitar playing to play less sloppily, hopefully this video will help you. Here are 5 causes of sloppy guitar playing in beginner to intermediate guitar players, and some ways to address that sloppy playing to play more cleanly. All right, number 1, lack of left and right hand synchronization. Now this might seem kind of obvious, but a lot of times you hear beginners and even early intermediate players play kind of like this. So I'm going to play this spider walk exercise that goes 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, just along every single string. I teach all my beginner players this just to work on hand synchronization and finger independence. Well, you often hear beginners play like this. A little bit of lack of synchronization between left and right hand. The finger goes down here on the fretting hand before you actually pick. And you end up kind of doing a micro hammer-on, essentially. The best way to address this is just to practice left-right hand synchronization. This exercise is a great way to do it. But you want to make sure that you're timing your right hand or your picking hand with your fretting hand in your fingers. Start with downstrokes like this and start with this spider walk. And eventually, you want to stick a metronome on and really get that timing down. On, on, on. Once you've done that, try it with alternate picking, because it's even easier to get desynchronized when you're doing that. Again, time that finger with the pick. You might feel like this is a very basic exercise to do, and maybe you're beyond this. But if you're still playing like this, then even if you're playing things that seem like they're more complicated than that, you still haven't tightened up your playing in this way. Now here's the thing. This is a great way to improve your synchronization, but nothing improves your synchronization more than actually playing the song you're trying to play in a synchronized way. In other words, these exercises are good for your general skills, but you want to target the songs you're actually working on, because things are always a little bit different when you're playing a specific song. All right, that was the first cause. Let's get on to the second. Overly simplistic or overly complicated picking technique or picking patterns. So an overly simplistic picking pattern is to always do downstrokes. Now there are, of course, genres of music like punk and metal where a lot of downstrokes in a row is part of the style. But generally speaking, besides that, you want to really work on your up and down strokes, and you want to use them strategically. You don't want to systematically play up and down strokes every other note in every circumstance. But you also, of course, don't want to just play downstrokes. You want to pick in a way that makes economic sense, that has the least amount of motion and motion that flows in the right way. Let me give you an example. If I'm playing the Sweet Home Alabama lick, which a lot of us know. When I play that lick, I do it like this. Down, down, up, up, down, down, up, up, down, down, up, or at the end there, down, 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 not too crucial. Why do I do that? Well, because I'm picking with the motion of the string changes. So down, down is just, the same string, but the second one I have is a down because I'm going to be going to the B string. Then I walk up. So I do 2 upstrokes in a row. Down, down, up, up, little circle. Down, down, up, up, down, down, up. If I were overly simplistic about this, if I just picked one type of picking and played it, I might be able to play it, but I won't be able to play as smoothly. Now, if you get really good at doing just downstrokes, you can make it sound pretty similar. But the second things become a little bit more complicated, that's going to reveal itself as a sloppy technique. Now, if I were playing in an overly complicated way, I would insist on religiously sticking to down and up strokes, alternate picking. But that's going to make things even worse. Down, up, down, up. Those are really inelegant string changes. Although it's strict alternate picking, it's actually going to make things a lot less smooth. Inside, inside, inside. It's really awkward. I have to actually focus to do it. Versus, again, the right down the middle approach, where you choose the picking pattern that fits the riff or the lick. Down, down, up, up. That just makes more ergonomic sense. So you want to avoid overly simplistic or overly complicated picking patterns. Okay, this next cause of sloppy playing requires a little bit of gain for it to really come through. So I'm going to switch my model here. All right, Cause 3 of sloppy playing, with gain on to make it really obvious, is when you have extraneous string noise, or when other strings either sympathetically vibrate because your guitar is just shaking and it makes the other strings kind of slowly vibrate, or you accidentally strike other strings that you don't mean to strike. This can be hidden somewhat when you don't play with distortion, which is actually interesting. It's kind of a common myth that distortion covers up all your mistakes. It does cover up some of them, but one mistake that it really amplifies is this extraneous string noise thing, because distortion compresses your signal and makes your quiet notes a lot louder. And so it's like you're holding a fire hose. If you accidentally hit some other string, you're gonna hear that really clearly. So if I'm playing this F sharp power chord here on the 2nd fret of the low E string, 2, 4, 4, and I accidentally go beyond it, you're really going to hear that with distortion. So you want to watch out for that when you accidentally strike those notes. A great way to avoid that when you're playing with a power chord is to mute the top strings with your first finger. Lay your finger across the strings. Don't bar, because then you're going to have those notes available to you. Just lay it across and only apply pressure with your fingertip here. And you can go, these are muted up here, right? There are all these strategies for muting, left hand, right hand. We're going to talk about just 2 of them today. One of them is this power chord muting thing where you mute the top strings. Fundamentally, you want to make sure you have good picking hand control, so you don't actually pick beyond these notes here. But you're going to want to strum a little bit more freely, and you don't want your right hand to take care of all the muting. So having your first finger draped across like this really gives you extra insurance. If you can have redundancies in your muting, that's even better. That way you can play like Green Day, right? Across all the strings, not worry about those. And what about the strings on the way to the note you're trying to play? Well, if you're going to rake like that, the way to rake like this, or the way I rake at least, you can of course rake muting with your left hand or your fretting hand, but I rake muting with my right hand. You want to just mute the other strings with the edge of your hand right here. It's kind of tricky. You have to make sure that you're just on the strings just right, and you either release the mute or you mute just far enough down. So the note that you want to play is the first one that sounds. So when you're raking, of course, you have to avoid extraneous string noise. But even when you're not raking, if I play a pattern here, say just a pentatonic pattern, and I don't do any muting with my right hand, even if I hit every single string correctly, there still might be sympathetic vibration in my playing that will make it kind of noisy. Check this out. If I stop playing like that, I didn't hit any other string. I didn't actually strike any of them. But there's all this sympathetic vibration that slowly builds up over time and makes your playing kind of sloppy. One way to avoid that, the main way to avoid that, is to mute with your palm as you're playing along. Look at that. Look how much more clean that is. It's because I'm leaning on the strings over here. You have some guys say that you should always float and never touch the bridge. I'm not one of those. I think that's a little bit limiting and a little bit too overly prescriptive in terms of what technique you actually should use when you're picking. In addition, if you float the whole time like this, you have that issue of sympathetic vibration. I think it's fine to have your hand on the bridge, and in this case, I think it's kind of crucial. What really matters is that you're moving along the strings and your picking angle remains roughly the same as you go. You don't want to do this, where you plant and pick like this. That's bad. And when you're not floating, that helps. Or rather, when you are floating, it helps to not do that. And when you're perched, there's a chance that you will do this. But there's no necessity in that. You could be on the bridge just for comfort, maybe back here, for palm muting to release and come down, or to mute in the way I'm talking about, and still move along the way with your arm. So very clean versus not so clean. That's kind of a hidden cause of sloppy playing right there. So mute along the way. Bass players know this a lot because those big bass strings vibrate like crazy and create all this sympathetic vibration. But it happens on guitar too, especially with distortion. The 4th cause of sloppy playing we'll talk about today is using too many or too few fingers. There's kind of a theme here. We often want balance in our playing. Let me give you an example. If you're playing a pentatonic minor scale, this is, the guitar player's example, here on the 5th fret, the A pentatonic minor, it makes a lot of sense to use every finger but the middle one, right? Use your pinky right here. You don't want to make this stretch over here. That's not super ergonomic. And especially since right afterwards, you're going to be going to a different fret with that finger. And that has a way of confusing your brain and your fingers. As opposed to having a nice logical assignment here. Pinky, index, ring, index, ring, index, pinky, index. That makes a lot of sense here. Using this would be using too few here. Now, say you're in a different part of the neck. Maybe you're playing a G minor pentatonic. Maybe you're playing the licks in Freebird, for example. And so on, right? With this pentatonic pattern, the frets are much closer together. So while you could stick to, and there might be a time where you want to do that, typically you'll see players just forego the pinky up here and just play the pattern like this. Yes, you have 3 frets there and you're spanning it by 2 fingers, but they're so small that it's much more ergonomic up here to play with a ring, finger, middle, ring. So I think when you're up here, using your pinky is using too many fingers. And when you're down here, using your ring finger is using too few fingers. And again, it's situational. And keep this in mind too. Sometimes the worse way feels better at the beginning because you're used to it. And sometimes the better way takes some time to get used to. So you're really going to be honest with yourself. Is this hard just because it's new, or is this hard because it's actually a worse way to play? All right, and the final cause of sloppy playing we'll talk about today is what I call piano fingers, or lifting your fingers as you go up a pattern like this. I think this comes from people thinking about a piano when they play. On a piano, if you went like this, all those notes would sound together, right? You have to lift your hand up to get to the next note. That is not the case on guitar, of course. So you got to just train your brain here and realize that these notes override the ones before. And there's an ergonomic reason why you want to do this. So you can get back down whenever you need to. Number one. And number two, just because there's less motion there. If you go like this, there's a chance an open string will get caught in the crossfire. So again, with this spider walk exercise, which is good for so many things, just 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 8, 7, 6, 5 the other way. Play this exercise with your fingers going down. Look at that. Okay. That way, when you're playing like hammer-ons and pull-offs, you're ready to go. And when you're bending, you already have some support beyond the finger that you're bending with. You always want to bend that way with support fingers behind, unless you're bending with your first finger and it's a small bend, right? If you did this, you're very likely to go like that, which is not good bending technique. So keeping your fingers down as you go up has you doing fewer motions, number one. You're less likely to make a mistake in between. And it gives you built-in support for bends when you actually want to do it. And again, for this one, practice the spider walk exercise, but also look at the licks and the riffs you're playing in the songs that you like and watch your fingers. Make sure you're not coming right back into that habit when you actually play the songs. And again, the techniques have to be instantiated, or they have to be practiced in actual songs for you to translate them from these exercises and to really bring them over. You really want this to be something that's automatic, something you don't think about. All right, hopefully that video was helpful to you if you're in this stage and you're looking to clean up your playing. If it was helpful, I'd appreciate if you liked and subscribed the video. And if you want more content like this and you want to support the channel, take a look at my Patreon. See you next time.